Audio.
So if you think HTML is just about the p tag and the div tag, then wait till you face an interview. So in this video, I am going to share the most commonly asked interview questions of HTML, from simple basics that everyone overlooks to tricky advanced that can actually decide your selection. So whether you are a beginner or preparing for your next front-end interview, these 10 questions are a must know for you. So let's start the video. So here we have the first question. So as you know, any interview starts with the basic, right? So most probably the interviewer will start with this question. So it says, what is HTML? What is the use of it? And why we call it as a markup language? So simply, your HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. So HTML simply defines the structure and content of your web pages. So you can think of HTML as simply the skeleton of our body. So just as our bones give structure and shape of the body, HTML also provides the structure for our web pages. And we simply call it as a markup language because HTML simply uses tags to mark up the text and tells the browser how it should be displayed. So for example, let's say we simply have a p tag. So here the p is simply a markup tag telling the browser that hello world should be displayed as a paragraph. So let's have the second question. So it simply says, what are the tags, elements, and attributes in your HTML? So we talk about tags. These are simply the building blocks of HTML and they are enclosed in angle brackets. So this is your angle bracket. So tag usually comes in pair, like an opening tag, and a closing tag. And in closing tag, you will always have a forward slash. So the examples of tags are simply your heading tags like h1 to h6, or maybe your p tag, div, span. There can be plenty of tags. So now let's understand the elements. So let's say we simply have h1 with simply hello world written, right? So this thing, so as you know, this is your start tag and this is your end tag. And this thing is your content. So everything from start to end tag called as your element. But in HTML, we also have some elements that do not have any content, like the br tag, which is simply used to have a line break. So this is known as empty element as it will not have any content. Or there can be many more empty elements. So now if we talk about the attributes, so attributes are those which provides additional information about the element. And remember, they are always included in the opening tags. If I take an example of this as well, then simply let's say we have img tag with a src. So as you know, in src, we will simply have the link of any image, then an alt attribute. Let's say, so here your src and alt are attributes, as these attributes are providing additional information about the element, that is the image element, img. So the next question is simply, what is the basic structure of an HTML document? Like the doc type HTML, HTML tag itself, head tag, body and all. So let's break this down. So at first, we simply have this doc type. So this simply tells about the version of HTML. So for this, it would be telling that we simply have the version of HTML as HTML5. Then we simply have this HTML tag. So this is your root element. So all the other elements comes under this HTML element, that is your root element. And this language simply tells you about the language of the web page, which would be helpful in search engine optimization. Then we simply have this head tag. So inside the head tag, we simply have our metadata, simply your additional information. So these are your metadata. So if I further break this down, that is the meta char set. This is simply your character encoding to simply include special characters like emojis and other symbols as well. Then this thing, that is meta name viewport, and this content will be useful to make your page responsive. Although directly it won't make your page responsive, it will be a bit helpful. Then this title element simply specifies the title of your document. So as here you can see, this HTML interview question. This is the title of your document. See, and here also for this website, that is Canva, you can see the title HTML tags whiteboard, and this tag link tag simply used to link your external CSS, and this would be the name of the file, that is style.css. And then we simply have the body tag, and remember, whatever is there inside your head tag will not be visible on your web page. The things that you will write inside the body tag, like here we have the h1 tag, all those things what you will write, that will be visible on the web page. That would be the actual contents of the web page. As here we have the h1 and p tag, so these two will be visible on the web page. See, so this was the breakdown of the structure of HTML document. So now let's move on to our next question. So the next question simply asks the difference between block level and inline elements. So your block element simply takes up the full width of the screen and always starts on the new line. So some of the commonly used block elements are simply your div element and your p element. So let me show you with example. What do you mean by full width and simply starting on a new line? So let's say we simply have a div element. I'll be using a bit of CSS to explain you the block elements, and to style your element in HTML, you can simply go for style attribute. So here I'm using a simple property, that is background color, to just show you the block element. So let's give any color. So see, it took the full width of the screen, and let's say we simply have this, and let's say on the same line only, if I have the p element. So let's say, and again I'm doing the same thing. So let's say red this time. So I have these two block elements in the same line. So see, even if I have both the elements on the same line, both took the full width of the screen and started on a new line, where on the other hand, we simply have the inline element. It is just the opposite of your block element. It does not take the full width, and it simply starts in the same line only. And the most commonly used inline element is your span element. So let's say we simply have the span element, and again I'll be using the same thing to show you on the screen. So let's say this time simply yellow. So these inline elements will only take the space required by them. See, and let's have one more inline element. So your anchor tag, that is used for having hyperlinks, is also an inline element. So let's say we simply have So you will see both of them will start in the same line only. So see, and also they are taking only that much space which is required by them. That for the span element, only this much space. And again for the anchor tag, this much. Whereas your block elements are occupying the full width. So that was the difference between inline and block elements. So now let's move on to our next question. So the next question that we have is simply your semantic HTML. So it says, what is your semantic HTML and why is it important? So as you know, semantic elements are simply those which simply have a clear meaning and purpose, and they simply describe the role of the content inside them, which will be useful for the browsers and the developers as well. So let's say we simply have, so as we have this header, so by seeing this element that is the header, one can simply understand that it will define the header section of a web page. Or maybe you also have the nav, which is also a semantic element. So this way we have this like header, nav, section, article, a site, as well as the footer. And these semantic elements are sometimes called as your layout elements as well. So here we simply have a layout created with the help of these elements. So at top, this is your header. These are your navigational links, your nav bar. Then simply this thing is your section, and inside this section you simply have the article. Then this is your sidebar, which is the aside, and at last you simply have the footer. But you will say that this layout we can also create with the help of div as well. But if you use semantic elements, then we have several advantages. Like the first, that is your readability. It simply makes the code easier to understand. Or maybe we get search engine optimization as well, like SEO benefits. Then search engines like your Google will understand your page better. Or maybe accessibility. The screen readers for visually impaired users can interpret the content correctly. So now let's move on to our next question. So it says, what new features or changes came in HTML5? So let's see the changes that came in HTML5. So first, we simply got new semantic elements that I discussed earlier. Then we got multimedia support. Like we got the audio tag, the video tag. So this tag can simply play media without your plugins. Then we simply got the animation and graphics, like the canvas element. So as you know, with this canvas element, you can simply go for 2D graphics, games, or maybe other things. Then you also got SVG support. So whenever you will use any image in your web page for creating your websites, so that time you can go for this SVG images. So those images will not be blurred even if you zoom as compared to other images of other formats. Then you also got form enhancements, like you got new input fields like your email, your date, your URL, your number, range, and color. And you also got attributes like required, placeholder, autofocus. So these were the things that got included in your HTML5. So now let's move on to our next question. So question 7 says, how to create a table in HTML. So now we are moving on to the practical questions. So to simply create the table, we need a table tag, which will simply define the table. Then a tr tag, that would be for the table row. Then simply th tag for the table head. and simply our TD tag, which would be table data. So let's quickly create a table. So simply a table tag. Then for the first row, the TR tag. So in the first row, we simply want the table head. So a TS tag. Let's say the first column would be simply name. Then for the second column, age. And then again, for the third column, third table head would be for city. So now for the second row, again TR tag. Inside the TR tag, now this time table data. So for name, let's say some name. Then the second data for your age. So till here, see, first column name, then age, then city. So for age, let's say 36. Then the third data, let's say Delhi. Then again, third row. It would be the same. Again, TR tag. Then three table datas. So this time again, let's say Rohit with age, let's say 38. And instead of Delhi, simply Mumbai. See, but right now it's not looking like a table, right? So we need to use a simple attribute in the table tag. That is simply border. So let's say 2. See, now it's looking like table, right? So this way you can create tables in HTML. So now let's move on to the next question. So at question number 8, we simply have, it simply says how to create a checkbox in HTML. So let's create a simple checkbox quickly. So for creating a checkbox, you simply need to use input type of simply checkbox. So let's use a label tag with the input type as simply checkbox. Let's say simply, you might have seen this in most of the websites, like after filling the form, at last, you simply get these options like simply, I agree to terms and conditions, kind of this, where you simply need to take this before you can submit the form, or simply instead of this, simply input type checkbox, let's say for your skills. And let's say one for your CSS and one for your JavaScript. See, and why I kept this inside the label tag? As you can see, even if I'm clicking this HTML label, your checkbox is getting marked, and the same for CSS as well as the JavaScript. So this is the advantage that we get when we use a label tag. So this way you can simply create a checkbox. So now let's move on to the question 9. So question 9 says how to create a simple drop-down list in HTML. So let's now quickly create a drop-down list. As you know, a drop-down list is created using a select element along with options tag. So for this again, let's have a label tag. Let's say we simply have option of choosing a city. So again, with the label tag, you should always use a for attribute. Let's say city. Then simply the select tag with the ID would be the same as the value of this for attribute. To make this active, the drop down list on clicking this option, that is choosing a city. So that I will show you. So see, if I am clicking this drop down is getting active. That is with the help of label tag. So this name attribute would be helpful when you simply submit the form. It will get submitted with the name of city only. So now the option tag and again the value. Let's say the first city, Delhi. Then another option tag for different city. Let's say this time simply Mumbai. And let's say again simply Kolkata. See, you simply created a drop down where you have options of different cities. Instead of Delhi, you want any other city to be the default value. Then you can simply use an attribute that is selected. So this time your Mumbai will be the default city selected. See. So now let's move on to our last question. That is simply the question 10. So the last question says, what are forms and how do we create a form in HTML? So let's just quickly create a form. So as you know, forms are simply used to collect your user inputs, which may be your name, your email, your passwords, or maybe other choices. And you can simply have a login form, a sign up form, a registration form, and many other forms. The form simply send the collected data to a server for processing. Your servers can be simply PHP, your Java, like for backend. As you know, Java will be used for backend, Spring Boot and all. Then simply your node. So these things are the backend part. And to simply create a form, you simply need a form tag along with some input elements like your input, text area, select and all. So let's quickly create a form. So first thing first, you simply need to have a form tag. Then attribute would be simply action, which will be to submit the form. Then simply a method, that is your post. When we simply put data or send data, we use post method. Then let's again have a label tag. Let's say simply for name. So the first input field would be the name. And for name, you know, input type would be simply text. And again, the ID would be same as the for attribute value. So let's say it would be username. See, you simply got the first input field. And whenever you create forms, you should always have at last input of type submit to simply submit the form, right? Which value would be again the submit. And let's again have some BR tags to give line breaks. Although if you use CSS, that time you can style them accordingly. But for now, I'm going with this BR tags. Then let's again have one more label for your next input type. That would be simply, let's say, for your password. So let's say simply, or let's say email instead of password. It would be simply email. Then again, input type would be simply email. Then ID with the same value as email. And again, the name attribute. So these things, the name attribute would be helpful for your backend part, but it's always a good practice to include your name attribute as well. So let's say user email. Now we simply have the name and the email option, right? So, but now there will be one issue. as initially both of the input fields are empty. If someone tries to submit the form, see, your form will get submitted, right? That we don't want. That is not a good thing. So simply to avoid that empty fields getting submitted, you can use attribute that is simply required. Let's see in both the fields. So now if you try to submit the form, see, it says, please fill out this field. So now if the name field is being filled, then again, if you try to submit, see, it asks for the email field to be filled. Then it says it should be in the proper format. So now you can submit the form. See. So this way you can include more input fields if you want, like your password field or maybe any other field you want. But for now, I've shown only these two fields. So this way you can create a form. So yes, these were some of the most important HTML interview questions that can actually make or break your front-end round. So if you found this useful, make sure to practice this before your next interview. And don't forget, interviews are not just about answers, they are simply about your confidence as well. So keep learning, keep coding, and see you all in the next one. Till then, take care.